Welcome back. These past few weeks, we really been focusing on the detrimental effect that having an absent father can bring up on a child. We focused last week primarily on the effects that it can have on a young boy. We're going to focus this week on the effects that it will have on a young girl. And so the video that we're about to get into is a submission by a Dr. Lisa Cortez. She is a psychotherapist, and she really goes into what effect uh, having an absent father can bring up on the child in their later years, especially in connection with relationships. So let's see what she has to say, and let's see what's going on.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you tuning in for the first time, welcome. I'm here to give you some advice and to hopefully help you throughout your life. So today I wanted to talk about some of the psychological effects that can come from not having a father or not having a mother. Sometimes it doesn't affect you at all if you have good role models in your life, and I hope that's the case with most of you all, but sometimes it can affect you. I wanted to talk about one specific one that I see often with my adult patients. So I see just teenagers and adults, and that's the population that I work with. And I have a lot of adults that come in and they grew up without a father or without a mother. I have a few that grew up with just their grandparents. And so what I often see in their lives is that it affects them in their relationships. When they have an intimate relationship, it just causes a lot of problems. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I wanted to talk about things that I tell them and things that I have them do that eventually help them become better partners and better in their relationships. So that one thing that I see often in my adult patients is jealousy and anxiety when they are in a intimate relationship. So anxiety is the fear of losing someone that you love, the fear that they might not love you. And so when you think about this, what causes you to feel that is a lot of times not knowing if they love you. And so that's kind of hard. If you think about it, do we know when someone loves us? We can, guess, or we can tell by the way they treat us and the way what they do. But that is never a for sure thing. It's not like having a cup of tea. When you have a cup of tea, you can see it, and you see that I have my tea. When you're in a relationship, in any type of relationship, you can't see love. You can see by the way they treat you and what they do for you and how they are in the relationship, but you can't really find a certain thing like, this is the love of my husband. I know that I have it, and I'm for sure certain that I have it. So that lack of knowing, sometimes we want that reassurance, and so it's normal, and it's normal to want that.
So now we'll stop right here. And the reason why we pause here is because Dr. Cortez has said something I think that's noteworthy. It's not a tangible concept. It's not something that you can put your hands on as far as love is concerned. It's not something that you can pick up and say, okay, I have this, so I know that I'm loved. It's something that you have to notice. There are nuances that come into play. There are subtle behaviors that a person exhibits towards you that lets you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that that person loves you and that your welfare and the concern for you is paramount to that particular person. But now herein lies the caveat, especially when it comes to individuals who have not felt the love of their father. It's difficult, especially as she mentioned in relationships, it's difficult to be able to pinpoint whether or not love is involved if you've never seen it. Because, like we said, it's intangible now. It's not something that you pick up and say, oh, because I have this, then that means I'm loved. Let's see what Dr. Cortez says further.
That But a lot of times with people that grow up without a father, we tend to have that need for reassurance and that need to make sure that people do love us. And so what I always tell patients, and what we have found out throughout, all these years of therapy that I've done with patients, is a lot of times in the back of your head, in the back of your mind, first of all, your mind is very, very powerful. Sometimes it's thinking stuff that we don't even know we're thinking. And so one example is, let's say you went through a traumatic event, and there was a cup exactly like this when you were in 5th grade. You had a traumatic event, and this cup was there. And so let's say you walk into a room 10 years later, 20 years later, and that same exact cup is on someone's desk. You might not remember that cup was present when you had that traumatic event, but your mind does. And so you might walk in there and get some sort of anxiety or sad, and you don't quite know why. But our mind picks up little things like that. So our mind is very powerful. So having said that, our mind is very powerful. Sometimes you don't realize that you're thinking, my father left me, or my father didn't want to be a part of me. Of course, there's people that grow up without a father because their father passed away, or, XYZ. But a lot of times when you know your father is alive and didn't want to be a part of your life, it's kind of hard to accept when other people love you. Because in the back of your head, you're thinking, if my own father left me and didn't love me, why would I believe that this stranger that I met loves me? And so it's kind of hard to accept that in your mind. You think that nobody loves you. So when we think like this, we kind of need that reassurance from our partner a little bit more. We start asking them, do you love me? Do you love me? Or where are you? Why aren't you with me? And we start becoming just more needy and more possessive, and that could lead to jealousy. And so what I want you...
So let's pause here. Once again, Dr. Cortez is making some powerful points. I'm personally, I subscribe to her platform just today, just to make sure that the issues that I see myself having, I can watch her platform and see if I can get some insight into it. But now, does that make sense to you, what Dr. Cortez is espousing? She's saying that because your mind picks up on things, your surroundings, things that you might not have even seen. Your mind picks up on these things while you're undergoing a traumatic event. And then she used the example of the cup that happened while you were going through something traumatic. And then you walk into an individual's office and that same cup is sitting there on the desk, and it triggers you. It triggers some anxiety within you because your mind is going back to the traumatic incident where the cup was present. So that leads directly into it. And I like the way she segued into the fact that because the mind is so powerful and it picks up on small nuances, small things that are in the environment, then the mind then reacts to those small things in the environment. Then it's the same way within the relationship that a person has or whose father was not present in their life. You go back to the fact that your father wasn't present, and then your father's love was not present, and then you question whether or not any individual can love you because the man who was responsible for bringing you into the world didn't. Now we'll pause here because I don't know if that's absolutely the truth of the situation. I don't know if I can say that he doesn't love you. I don't know if I could say that any man who brings a child into this world doesn't love their child. But what I will say is that, as she just mentioned, the mind is a powerful thing. And so we're not making excuses, but you never know what kind of trauma an individual is dealing with. Some people have the strength, the moral fiber to continue to take care of their children despite their own traumas. And some people don't. Some people don't have the strength to deal with things. And so I don't know if I can necessarily say that the person wasn't loved. But what I will say is that proof of that love was not present. The proof that the father loved the daughter or the son was not present because the father was not present in order to show proof. He wasn't there to pick them up when they skinned their knee. He wasn't there to help them learn how to ride their bike or anything that fathers usually would do. He was absent. So, but it's interesting how she made that segue about how powerful the mind is, and then how, given certain circumstances, the mind brings back anxieties from traumatic situations that you experienced in the past. And that's absolutely true in this case with individuals who had absent fathers. The trauma of the situation, it comes back. It shows evidence that there is still a lingering issue. Let's keep going.
I want you to think of this for a bit and think of, do I think that I don't deserve love because my father left me or my father didn't want to be a part of me? So think of that. And I want you to think of a 6-year-old little boy whose father left him. And he comes up to you and he asks you, I don't think I deserve to be loved because my father didn't even love me. And I think that no one's going to love me. What would you tell that 6-year-old? Would you agree with him? Of course you wouldn't, right? So just how you would reassure him and you would try to get him to not think that way, that's what I want you to do with you. I want you to reassure yourself and realize that what your dad did when he left you, or your mother when she left you, has nothing to do with you. Just like you would tell any young little boy or little girl, that's what I want you to tell yourself. His lack of responsibility, his lack of being a man, all that bad, I could say so many bad things about parents that aren't in their children's lives. All that has nothing to do with you. And so you need to realize that. And once you start thinking that way and changing your mentality and trying to work through that, then you become more understanding, and then you love yourself a little bit more. Then you realize that you don't need that reassurance from your partner anymore. Yes, we still want them to treat us well, and you want to be with someone that loves you, but you're not going to need that reassurance. That that jealousy will go away. That asking them where they're at, or asking them to call you every 5 minutes, that will eventually go away.
So let's stop here once again. And so it's nice once again how logically everything that Dr. Cortez is saying is flowing together. So individuals who are without their father at the moment, maybe growing up, maybe an adult, Dr. Cortez emphasizing the fact that it's necessary for you to understand that had nothing to do with you. The choices that were made were not your choices. So there's no need to beat yourself up about it. There's no need to continue to grieve in this particular instance. So she used the example of the 6-year-old child and how you would reassure that child that it had nothing to do with them. How could it? A lot of times when these decisions are made, the child in question hasn't been born or is very, very young. So how could you have anything to do with that decision? How could you have made your father leave? You didn't. So you begin to reassure yourself of the fact that this had nothing to do with you. These were two adults that made a decision to bring a child into the world, and before they made that decision, it was their responsibility to make sure that the child would be welcomed, they would be nurtured, they would be cared for, they would be provided for and protected. That's their responsibility. But because they didn't fulfill their responsibility, or one party from that group didn't fulfill their responsibility, that has absolutely nothing to do with you. But what does have something to do with you? It's the way that you respond now. Especially with the adults here, we have to take responsibility for the way that we respond. Now we've identified the issue. And as Dr. Cortez mentioned, now it's time to do the work. It's time to reassure yourself that this situation does not reflect upon you, because you had nothing to do with it. You had no control over it. If you had control over it, both your mother and your father would have been there to raise you. But you didn't have any control over it. So there's absolutely no way that you could blame yourself for this. And if you are blaming yourself, it's time to relieve yourself of that particular burden. So, one of the things that I noticed too, and it's a wonderful thing, I think, as an individual begins to reassure themselves, then their interactions with others become better, because you realize that you have some self-worth. Even though your father or your mother may not have been there, maybe you're a daddyless daughter, that has nothing to do with your own self-worth. You're still very, very valuable. And when you reassure yourself of your value, then you can see the value in others. And as she mentioned, now you can become more reasonable, more sympathetic, more empathetic. Your life begins to improve quite a bit. So let's finish out the video and see what else Dr. Cortez has to teach us.
You do feel that you need to work through this with a therapist, please let me know. And I will research therapists in your area and, give you a few names. But I will link down in the description, Psychology Today, which is a website that you can go to find therapists in your area. So please work on this, and you are loved. And you deserve to be loved, and you need to love yourself too. So I hope this helps. And this is just the beginning of trying to get those reassuring, that mind that needs to be reassured. This is the beginning step. If you want me to talk about this in more detail, let me know. There's a lot of other things that you can do. And it's just important for you to work on this, because you want to be happy in your life, and you want to be successful, and you want to be loved by others. So let me know if you have any other topics that you want me to cover, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
So I know you're wondering why I chose this particular video segment for us to review. I did so because we needed the expertise. We needed it. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I'm an engineer by trade. But one thing I have come to understand is that if you want to understand a particular subject, then you go to the individuals who are experts in that particular subject. And Dr. Cortez really hit up on a lot of points that affect our community at large, because there are so many single parent families, millions of children involved in a single parent household. Then it's necessary that as these children grow and mature, that they see that there has to be some work that has to be done in order for them to have a happy and a productive life. Dr. Cortez mentioned many points, but I think the one that stood out the most is an individual reassuring themselves. Yes, reassuring themselves that the situation that took place had nothing to do with them. They were children. You are a child. And so the decisions that were made by adults, individuals of age, to make those decisions. And so whatever those decisions were, those decisions rest upon those individuals who made them. We're thankful that a person had at least one parent or a grandparent or uncles or aunts that raised them. We're thankful that you were raised were cared for, you were taken care of and brought up. We're thankful for that. But individuals who decided that they didn't want to be a part of your life should not dictate how your life turns out. I think that's a ridiculous notion. And I think that when we allow individuals who choose not to be a part of our life to dictate how our lives go, we're giving away too much power. No, I don't subscribe to that particular notion. And so the thought that Dr. Cortez mentioned about reassuring yourself of your own value, coming to the realization that the decisions that were made in regards to who took a part in parenting you were not left up to you. They are not your responsibility to correct. I think that's a powerful thought. I think it is. And I think it really gets us pointed in the right direction, because there are certain things we're accountable for and there are certain things that we're not. And so what Dr. Cortez did in that video is help us to appreciate what we are accountable for. If we fall into this particular category of being an individual who did not have a father present, then here is a way to approach the situation and to do it in a constructive way, so that you can build past the trauma and really start to enjoy life. Because think about it. Because of the fact that a person's father was not present, Dr. Cortez said that then you begin to question whether or not anyone could love you, right? And then if you're in a romantic relationship or an intimate relationship, you begin to question whether or not the love that you think this person has for you is actually the real thing. So you can see the confusion that's involved, right? Individuals don't really know how to interact in this particular spirit. They don't know what intimate love looks like because it was missing. Their father never showed it to them. And so it becomes something that's hard to identify, because as she mentioned, it's intangible. There's nothing that you can pick up and say, this is love. I have love because I have this. No, it's something that you have to be able to see through example. But if you hadn't had an example there, how will you see it? And so that reassurance that those things were not your responsibility can now allow you to build. I know where I am now. I know what I have to do. And so I can set about the work that's necessary to put me in a better space. And so I appreciated that. I will leave Dr. Cortez's information in the video description. I think that it's something that we really, really need to look at as a community. The effect that having an absent father can bring upon the child, whether that's a boy or a girl. We both can see that we can see that both experience difficulties because of having an absent father. And so it's time now to face those difficulties, to put some positive effort into it, to do the work as I mentioned, to overcome them so that our lives can be positive, productive, and full of joy and happiness. That's been the video. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Be easy.